Zaza, the rain goddess, is here, which I've been foreshadowing on this channel for like a couple of months now after buying the sweater. She's sort of here, she's a nightmare, but her lore is absolutely insane and we really need to break everything down here. Her design, her history, the fear that she strikes into the hearts of the celestial dragons, it's all pointing towards some truly insane things for characters like Emu, Luffy, Monkey D. Dragon, and even Nami? Also, is Zaza the rain god, the sea god, both? I actually think that that's the case, and I do think it actually goes even deeper than that into the abyss itself. So let's actually kick things off with what we know about Zaza based on many things that Oda might have hidden throughout the many chapters of One Piece and the newest information we now finally got in 1182, because I think a great place to start is actually her name. Now, while some of you are probably thinking that Zaza would be a better name for the forest god because of all that devil lettuce and thank Zaza memes and stuff like that, Oda was actually very deliberate here. If you're up on the theory stuff, you already know that Zaza is an iconic Japanese manga onomatopoeia. It's the little words used in panels when there is heavy rainfall, the rushing sound of intense rain pouring from the sky. It's also what you just say in Japanese every day if it's like actually, as the British would say, raining cats and dogs. I don't know if the British still say that, but yeah. This is just like typical Oda. He loves symbolic names rooted in sounds, myths, and all that fun jazz. It also lines up well with Nika's name, which could be connected to Nico Nico or Nika Nika, the sound used for someone grinning or smiling happily. Surely we might be able to figure out the name of the forest god or the earth god this way too. I'll give it some thought. Now, I actually think we've known about the rain god for quite a while, obviously, right? They were first introduced during Skypiea, one of the four gods that was referenced in their own mythology. We've kind of been conflating the rain god and the sea god kind of together into one being, and that, to be fair, still could absolutely be the case. In fact, I definitely think it is the case, but technically I do want to point out that it could not be the case as well. The Skypians and the celestial dragons referring to the sea god as the rain god based on their own location being among the clouds definitely could work. And honestly, it's kind of really hard to tell because it feels weird to me that they are different. Unless Zaza is, the Void Century Poseidon, in which case everything really totally tracks and I'm chill with that. And that could mean there is still a completely different sea god out there as well. Or maybe the Void Century Poseidon inherited the rain goddess's power from the first world, and then that's also chill. Regardless though, I really think that Zaza being the total enemy of the Holy Land makes a ton of sense because of how rain and water are viewed symbolically in One Piece. It's creation and destruction in the most natural sense, which of course is the complete opposite of Emu, who seems to try and represent creation and destruction in the most unnatural sense, right? You know what I mean? Like devil pacts, control, massive buildings, metal gates, the list goes on and on and on. Rain feeds crops, fills rivers, sustains kingdoms, creates oceans, and falls on everyone equally. Water, quite literally, is the source of civilization itself. After all, there is a reason that most key civilizations throughout history have always been built near bodies of water. It's a building block of life. It's important for agriculture, for trade, for everything. That is, and I hate to be using the word again, but quite literally the point of the Alabasta arc. It's struggling because there is no more rain present. The whole arc really hinges on the restoration of water and rain on the island. Which, surely, considering that Alabasta is like super key to unraveling Emu, who is obsessed with their princesses and queens, is not just some vague coincidence by Oda. Like maybe Vivi is rocking some rain god connections herself or something. I mean, she did scream and back to bring the rain, right? So it could just be that simple maybe. But of course we also have to look at the other side of the coin, because at the same time, rain also creates floods, typhoons, hurricanes, drowning, and a lot of environmental destruction. A rain god in One Piece could totally represent a natural order, life and death, and still be an idealized figure. In fact, we actually know that that's the case because from the Jinbei cover story adventures right here, which I wanted to talk about for a while now, we actually do know that there was an ancient kingdom that worshipped the sea god on the surface, making great tributes to them. We see him arriving at this weird shrine that's dedicated to make offerings to the sea god, which is actually what Gecko Moria then based his own barrel traps on Thriller Bark. They are the same barrel, only that, Moria used them to lure in travelers into the Florian Triangle. And Zaza really seems to be both a bringer of life and a bringer of ruin, right? Like, that totally lines up. Jesus Christ. That really lines up with everything that we have been learning about the gods in One Piece recently altogether. Imu's statement in chapter 1181 is a prime example, I think. They outright state here that there is no difference between a god and a devil. Doflamingo practically screams this at Marineford when he says that justice and, who was good and who was bad just changes throughout history and is decided by whoever wins and thus becomes justice itself. Now this time around, killing him actually appears to reinforce the exact same concept by implying location and culture actually affect how these gods are viewed throughout the world. Killingham explains to us that Zaza is the ultimate fear of all celestial dragons beside the D-Clan and Nika because they live so high above the clouds and view rain and the ocean, or more aptly, falling into the water, as their greatest fear. Which, seeing how Imu just starts bleeding when they're close to the ocean, who can blame them? And in the eyes of the celestial dragons, Zaza might as well be kind of like the Baba Yaga, or I guess the Baba Zaza. I wonder if she could kill a man with a pencil? Probably, I'm just gonna assume. Zaza and her domain are the enemies of the CDs, and that kind of makes a lot of sense based on what we also read in our best friend, the Harley text, because it does say that in the second world, the sea god raged after the sun god was slain, and that is likely what actually ended up flooding the world to begin with. Her power is what rivals the devil fruits, the power that Imu seems to have a very significant degree of mastery over. In other words, Zaza is kind of an Imu heart counter, which is why when we hear about her, she's called a rain goddess, a sea god, or a sea devil. She probably is just all of these things, it just kind of depends on who in the world you actually ask. To one culture, Zaza could have been the rain goddess who brought life to the land. To another, she's the sea devil responsible for flooding the entire world, literally creating the seas and a lot of destruction. So, that's who Zaza is, but really, much more importantly, what is Zaza? And by that I mean, what can we actually unravel based on her crazy design here and what she's inspired by, and how does that inform the bigger plot of the series and what she might actually look like in the real series if anyone has eaten her devil fruit, or if she's even still around herself. And I think what immediately makes Zaza stand out compared to many other figures like Imu or even Nika is how just specifically uniquely Japanese her entire design looks. Oda has of course always borrowed very heavily from multiple myths, but with Zaza, it feels almost laser focused here. Just for example, look at her straw hat. I mean, that alone raises insane implications about the symbolism of straw hats in One Piece, but it also ties directly into the traditional Japanese kasa hat that Ace weaves for oars in the land of Wano. Also, fun fact, kasa is the name for the Japanese-style straw hats, but it's also what you call an umbrella in Japanese too. So does this tie into Nika and/or Joy Boy in some way? Are there multiple types of straw hats in the series with like different meanings and symbolisms? What I think is actually important here is that this hat specifically is a so-called ichimegasa, a traditional Japanese farmer and traveling hat designed to protect people from the rain and from harsh weather. Now obviously I think the reason that this detail matters a lot is because it instantly ties her to agriculture, storms, water, and survival. Like personally, and feel free to correct me in the comments if you think differently, I don't really feel like this is the design of a conqueror sitting on a throne like Imu or a bouncy crazy rubber boy like Joy Boy Nika. To me, this is much more the design of a wandering weather deity, a figure deeply connected to the land and just nature itself, who may have roamed multiple islands on the sea, spreading the tale of the rain goddess. It's also weirdly giving me major Lady in the Mist vibes from The Last Airbender, right? But the really interesting detail is the veil dressed across the depiction of Zaza's face. Because this veil does not just resemble traditional ceremonial wear, it almost perfectly matches the veil that Gunko wears inside the flower room surrounding Imu and the other holy knights. Now, the flower room itself already feels incredibly symbolic for the final saga in so many ways. We've talked about this before, with its inspiration of the forbidden fruit and the snake and the forbidden garden, but it's also tied to secrecy, divinity, and femininity, which was of course what literally made so many people think, including me, that Imu might have been a woman. So now seeing Zaza carry similar imagery immediately kind of raises questions about whether the rain goddess and the Holy Land maybe share a deeper connection than we ever realized. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that is kind of a very strange visual parallel for Oda to suddenly make if all these characters are completely unrelated, which we already from this chapter also know that they aren't, because Imu is kind of talking to Nidhogg and to Ragnir, and he's like, oh, we used to be buddies, why did you betray me? Imu knows everyone. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say it almost feels like intentional enough here by Oda to imply some sort of shared divine lineage or symbolism or mythology between the former princess, Gunko, and the sea god. Like, did Imu purposefully recruit a descendant of the rain goddess as a big old FU to the world, right? That would be kind of awesome and would be very Imu-like, not gonna lie. And I mean, Gunko definitely has the same vibes as Killingham's version of Zaza, so it at least wouldn't be that big of a surprise, though again, we just don't know how specific Killingham's nightmare version of Zaza actually is to reality. Then of course we also have the mythological inspiration behind her design, which seems to be heavily tied to the two Shinto dragon gods Takaokami and Kuraokami, who actually, depending on the story, may just be the same gods. It's kind of a little bit weird, as it does in Japanese mythology often, because both Taka and Kura are kind of used interchangeably before Okami to represent the same figure, but these two deities, whether it's one or two, which kind of is funny because that's kind of what we're talking about with the rain and, ocean gods, they're both associated with rain, rivers, storms, and flowing water, but what makes them really fascinating here is how they are divided. Takaokami is sometimes interpreted as the dragon god of the mountains, while Kuraokami is associated with the abyss or deep waters in the ocean below. One water deity above, one water deity below. Now, obviously, I don't need to tell you that this brings up a very interesting point in regard to the abyss, and that kind of tracks with the thematic Imu covenant names being shallow sea, deep sea, and abyssal sea covenants. But the mountain part and Zaza's clear Japanese aesthetic also make me wonder if there is actually a much deeper connection here to Wano specifically. Let's break this down, right? Wano, New Wano, is created after walls were erected around Old Wano that were flooded by rainwater, sealing the country away from the rest of the world and hiding away Old Wano and Pluton. With her design here and Wano's clear hatred of the Holy Land, could it be that Zaza is directly tied to or even from Wano itself? And more importantly, is she the one who sealed Pluton beneath all that water with her rain god powers? We get this little sequence here by Oda showing us how after the walls were erected by someone, presumably maybe an earth god or something, how then it was flooded by rainwater, but we don't actually know how quickly this happened. It could have been hundreds of years, how it was kind of originally implied in the manga, but for all we know, it was just rain, walls up, and rain goddess goes boom, and everything is flooded immediately. Which I gotta say is something that I've always kind of struggled with anyways, how Old Wano actually was sank, because the entire idea of it being drowned over time by rain honestly doesn't super make sense. I mean, surely the water would also evaporate or leave or soak into the land, or also just erode away the buildings, but they're kind of perfectly preserved underwater. You'd really have to have an insane storm to actually flood that place beyond repair, and I do think that's exactly what may have happened here. I do think that after Joy Boy's defeat, I think Zaza is the one who sealed Pluton and the ancient city away in Wano, thus also kind of raising the new Wano above the ocean, which could be why she's depicted with a very Japanese aesthetic, being a hint towards this Wano connection too, especially because I still don't think that she's from Wano. I think that she's Poseidon from the Void Century, and that's why the Ryugu Kingdom has this very Dragon Palace vibe to it. We, of course, talked about it recently in a big video. Or, actually thinking about it, now that I've talked about them being two different gods in Shinto, could they also actually just be two different gods in the series, but they're a pair? Like, is Poseidon the abyssal sea god dragon goddess and Zaza the rain dragon goddess from the mountains, who are now kind of conflated because no one realized that there were actually two of them. And the Dragon Palace in Fishman Island is a hint towards a greater connection between the gods of Fishman Island and Wano. Again, we talked about it before that I personally felt like the weird Wano aesthetic of the Fishman Palace might mean that the palace used to be part of Old Wano, but maybe it's just actually hinting at a deeper connection between these two places, which could also explain, of course, why the Sea Kings talk about the two sovereigns meeting, which might then just be the two different rain/sea gods from the two islands, kind of explaining that much older connection. Actually kind of makes sense, I think. I don't know, let me know what you think. Even more interestingly though, these dragon gods are also tied to the concept of life-giving water itself. They're head spring god deities that provide the precious water needed for all living things to survive. And I think that immediately makes Zaza feel way less like a simple storm goddess and much more like this primordial force of nature tied to the balance of the entire world itself, which actually lines up with something really interesting I just discussed this week in a video about the gods being devils in One Piece, like that the gods and devils are the same thing. You should actually check it out. There's a lot of fun stuff that kind of works really well with what we're seeing here, but I go into what the Sea God's Devil Pact particularly could be, and I'm just gonna put it here. I kind of propose that their powers and role are, much more about maintaining order and balance in the world compared to any of the other gods, so that these deities, being her inspiration, kind of really track with that exact train of thought from mythology. Now, of course, who would I be to also just ignore the multiple arms here either? Because across Buddhist and Eastern mythology, many armed figures are often associated with transcendent divine beings capable of overwhelming supernatural powers. Now, in One Piece specifically though, it really instantly, of course, calls to mind Zoro's Ashura, because Ashura has always felt strangely mythical compared to normal hockey techniques, which I'm fairly confident that Ashura should be, right, based on what Kaido is saying. Zaza's design seems to reinforce the idea that these godlike manifestations may just be supernatural in design compared to the rest of them. Also, it kind of makes you wonder, is Ashura also gonna turn out to be a god in the series? Just asking. Like, Ashura is just weird. And Zoro, king of the unknown, I don't know, there might be something happening here. Now, Zaza and her many arms are also giving obviously some major demonial Fleur vibes to me as well, at least, in how Oda chose to draw them. Maybe there's a deeper connection between Robin and Zaza as well, because both of them rock the emo eyes too. I don't know, I don't want to say that every woman has a connection to Zaza in the story, but man, all these different elements that Oda's using here are kind of making it hard not at least to mention it and draw a little bit of a parallel here, especially after Robin finally has now reappeared in chapter 1182, specifically right before Zaza also appears in the manga, revealing, by the way, that Biblio, the absolute GOAT, has actually hidden the Oharan books in a secret area of the library that's been protecting them, but I guess that's neither here nor there, I guess. Not yet, at least, for the story. Now, just to quickly round the design section of the video off here, we obviously also have to talk about that giant halo of water behind her head. Now, this detail is, of course, crazy interesting by itself, but also because it obviously mirrors Imu's shadowy, evil halo, which became a supermassive weapon in chapter 1182, and ironically, rained just hell from above. Which makes me wonder two things. Do all the gods have these divine halo rings behind them, or does Imu only have one because he stole that ability from Zaza? I'm actually kind of totally torn on this because admittedly I kind of love the idea of all the gods having these halos in different elements or shapes, but something about Imu still gives to me the vibe that like he's stolen all these different gods' powers for himself at some point, as if he's almost forced himself to become a divine figure by harnessing all of the other natural gods' powers. Zaza's Halo Ring, Nika's creation powers and Omen, and then the forest god's devil fruits, like honestly, this would actually make Imu out to be a figure like Elish Norn from Magic the Gathering, which is something I can totally get behind. Oh, and you didn't know I liked Magic the Gathering? You're saying that? Well, it's literally one of my favorite things, and I love it so much that a couple of months ago, earlier this year, I actually created a whole nother channel, Monocrypt, where I'm slowly learning all of the crazy Magic lore. Spoiler alert, it's got a lot of shared themes and interesting parallels with One Piece. So I think you'll love it if you're into Magic, and even if not, there's just really cool stories and lore there. I've linked it below. Check it out if you like. Little sponsoring myself here. Circling back now to Zaza and Imu's connection though, I think I really need to address a key line from Summers in regard to Imu that's in chapter 1182 as well. Did Zaza damage or hurt Imu in some way, shape, or form in the past? Summers' latest line in the Japanese official saying, "Im-sama wa hondai koko ni irenu karada," is like kind of all about Imu's body actually being in this, like in his real body on Elbaf, and is like extremely nuanced and can be interpreted in a couple of ways. For starters, it definitely kind of confirms the idea that Imu has multiple bodies that, they have access to, which, makes sense because we saw them from their shadowy, whatever that original shape is that we always assume with Imu, them like after arriving on Elbaf, like painfully shapeshifting and morphing into what we see right now. So it's very clear that, of course, like Imu has multiple shapes going on. Also weird that Summers, out of all people, who seems to be one of the people who has the highest covenant, like seems to know so much about Imu themselves anyways. It kind of makes you wonder if there's a lot more to Summers specifically that he just hasn't really let on yet at this point, and that he's maybe much older than we originally ever thought. Maybe even from the same line or generation as the Gorosei for all we know. But for the other potential meaning here, let me break down the sentence a little bit to you. So, Hondai koko ni irareru karada, Hondai is kind of means the original, the like primary like body. And the like basically since the sentence cuts off, it's kind of unclear what Summer's talking about. So Summers could also be saying, oh, Imu is here in the body that originally belonged to Koko, to this place, which might also potentially imply that, like Imu is arriving in Elbaf in a body that originally belonged to the country of Elbaf. So it's, again, classic Oda being very ambiguous with the actual meaning here. The jury still very much out on this, but I kind of needed to address this point specifically in detail because I do think it's going to be a major factor of the series going forward. Like, whether that's going to be in the next couple of chapters or later in the story when, Luffy and Imu might meet again, we'll have to see, but it is going to pay off, I think. Because you can ask, like, will Luffy get a halo, or will Imu lose his once the modern Rain God maybe enters the equation here completely? Which now brings me to the big question. If Zaza truly existed as one of these ancient godlike figures during the Void Century, then who now carries their will in the modern era, right? I think we're all asking that. Because if One Piece has taught us anything over the last couple of years, it's that inherited will is everything in the story. Nika's will survived through Joy Boy and then Luffy's. Poseidon's power reappears through Shirahoshi. Blackbeard carries the Davy clans and Davy Jones's dying dream. So naturally, if the Rain Goddess was real, the next question becomes, who inherited that power or symbolism? And honestly, to me, the most obvious answer is, let's say it together, Monkey D. Dragon. Oh, you didn't say it? Okay, well, okay, I thought that. Like, I mean, the connections are almost perfect after all, right? I mean, the dude is named Dragon, a direct tie to the Shinto inspirations we talked about behind Takaokami and Kuraokami, the dragon gods associated with rain, storms, rivers, and flowing water. But as far as the series is concerned, Dragon is also just thematically the perfect natural enemy for the Celestial Dragons that they would fear like as much as the D-Clan and Nika. Killing him drops the bomb that the things that the Celestial Dragons fear the most are the D-Clan and Nika and Zaza. And honestly, Dragon being tied to both the D-Clan and the Rain God mythology would just make him an absolute nightmare for the world government. He would essentially embody both of their greatest fears simultaneously, and considering the dude wants to destroy the Holy Land and all that it stands for, yeah, Monkey D. Zaza would be pretty rad and fit that really, really well, especially because Oda surrounds Dragon with weather, rain, and storm powers all the frickin' time. Every single major appearance involving anything with Dragon has been building up to this connection. You might remember that a couple of months ago I actually suggested he might be tied to the god Susanoo, the storm god of Japanese mythology as well. Others have proposed other rain and storm gods like Thor or Chak or Zeus, but no matter how you cut it, Dragon is just rocking the storm god vibe. Wind bursts suddenly appear around him, right? Storms roll in, rain signals his arrival. The damn lightning strikes during Loketown are just a smoking gun here. My man is a rain guy for sure. But what really seems to double down on it for me is the fact that Dragon, Luffy, and Imu all possess the symbolic markings under their left eye, right? Like one of the most mysterious things that Oda keeps hiding throughout the entire series. It's been quite a long time since then, but if you're one of the people who has watched the greatest One Piece theory you'll ever watch, like the big theory video that went super viral a couple years ago, that's kind of at the center of everything in that video. The idea that the left eye and a marking under the left eye is kind of hidden throughout the entire story. And with Imu now being associated with godhood, devils, abyssal power, and ancient royalty, Dragon's tattoo that looks weirdly similar definitely feels like a very deliberate symbol tied to some other ancient lineage or inherited role. And if Dragon truly is the next rain god, that marking could symbolize a divine connection. I mean, the Shandians rock a sick face tat and worship the rain god. All I'm saying, man. And as you know, I've been for the longest time a big fan of the idea that Dragon is just gonna end up being the second most important character next to and very close to Luffy in the story, and that's why Oda has been saving a lot of the stuff about him just to not reveal it, because we're gonna find out that he's the key to a lot of the other things that Luffy actually doesn't fill himself. Though I do want to say, as strong as the Dragon argument is, there is also another character I think that needs to be discussed here, because there is just a real chance that they are who's relevant. We're talking about the navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates, Nami. Because let's not kid ourselves, there's just no way that I could ever discuss a rain goddess video without talking about the weather girl, the weather goddess herself. Weather, rain, storms, they aren't just skills for Nami, they're kind of baked into her very being. It hasn't really come up that much recently, so maybe you've forgotten about this, but from the very beginning of the series, long before we ever got Climatek Nami or Zeus Nami, our orange-haired navigator here displayed a weird supernatural understanding of storms, wind currents, rainfall, and just having a feeling for the climate around her as a whole. Early on, characters constantly comment on just how abnormal her weather intuition actually is, and over time, Oda has slowly evolved her from navigator into someone who just practically manipulates the climate itself with her advanced climatech weapons and, her studying under the Weatherians and obviously Zeus. And we also can't just forget that Nami literally translates to wave in Japanese, as in a ocean wave, to tie her into the sea goddess, who may also just be the rain goddess, Zaza. And unlike most Straw Hats, Nami's lineage to this day remains completely unknown. I mean, Zoro is a descendant of Ryuma, Sanji is the heir to the Germa kingdom, Frankie is Queen's son. Even Brook's past has been revealed slowly but surely and seems to be something much more deep and special than we originally thought. The character we have the least knowledge on, especially from the original 5 crew members from the East Blue, is Nami at this point. And that honestly could be something that we learn way more about if it's revealed that she is in some way descended or connected to Zaza. So she doesn't have all the powers of the Rain Goddess, but she has this innate connection to her powers, this ability to feel, see, predict rain, storms, winds, weather changes. And this could finally explain the Elbaf moment that I've been trying to figure out for literal weeks at this point, because when Imo arrives using his body, the original body, in chapter 1179, Nami is the first person to notice that something is wrong here. And especially in hindsight, that kind of feels incredibly weird. Don't you feel? Is that just me? Like, Oda rarely gives characters random awareness moments without there being some reason for it and some payoff, so why Nami here specifically? Why does she immediately react to Imu's presence? Well, her lineage and its potential tie to Zaza could be everything that we've been missing the entire time here, and that would paint a totally different picture for what the end of the series might actually look like. Especially if it turns out that in reality, both Dragon and Nami are the modern manifestation of the rain and the sea gods, like we previously discussed, of them being potentially a pair or two different beings. Takaokami and Kuraokami both being inspirations for Zaza that might point towards two gods in the modern era, filling Zaza's and Poseidon's roles. Maybe Dragon and Shirahoshi are the actual divine power users, but maybe Nami being a possible descendant of the goddess might play into her abilities later on in the story as well somehow. Or maybe Nami and Shirahoshi will team up to channel, way more power and deal with some massive threat while Dragon goes full Zaza on the Holy Knights up in Marijua, bringing rain upon their stupid little bubbleheads and becoming their true nightmare as the Rain Devil. Or maybe Nami is gonna eat the Rain God Devil fruit, which then might grow on the tangerine tree. Like, that's been something that's been speculated about forever, that like now that we know that fruits reincarnate and everything, that at some point some devil fruit will grow on the tangerines on the Sunny, and that way Nami could become the Sea Devil. Speaking of which though, are the gods and devils truly one and the same? Because Imu seems to say so, and I kinda have to agree at this point. Which could actually reveal way more about Luffy's final role in the story, about Zaza, and if you wanna see what that means for the Devil Pacts, Imu, Luffy, the Earth God, the Forest God, you should really check out this video right here, where I break it all down. It's oddly relevant to what we talked about in this chapter. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks so much to all of our fantastic Patreons, and I will hopefully see you in the next video.